now that we've begun the month of Kislev, whose crescendo is Chanukah, that's one of the themes of the whole concept of Chanukah is courage, is standing up for what we believe. It's the whole idea, really, on the simple level of what the Maccabees represent, is they represent the idea of a far, it must have been called far. By the way, they were called far right then. That's why this is so interesting how history repeats itself, because the main enemy, certainly in the beginning, and the main issue that the Chashmonaim, the children of the high priest, were facing was they were up against the Hellenist Jews. They were up against the apologist Hellenist Jews, who basically were anti-Torah, and they were all about fostering and welcoming the foreign Greek culture, and everything about this Greek culture and what's called Greek wisdom, and on a deep level of understanding what it really is all about. It's about only believing in things that have a material form and that are physical and that can be proven. It's very Esavian, like you were talking about last week. So everything that we believe in is the antithesis of Greek wisdom, because we believe in what cannot be proven. We believe in what cannot be seen. We believe in the inner spiritual dimension of everything. So when they stood up against all of that, and they showed this tremendous courage to try and overthrow the oppressor and throw them out and cleanse the temple and rededicate. That's what Chanukah means, dedication. Rededicate our people for Hashem's purpose. They were up against this wave of again, it's called Hellenization, but the description in the works of that time, of the sages, is like basically that was the biggest problem, were these Jews that were in denial and that were basically trying to become like everybody else, and so they had to basically take the lead and try to bring the people back to their core values. So certainly, if we compare it to what's going on today, they would have been called like far right extremists, because far right means that you believe in God. It means that you believe in God, honestly.
Right.
It means that you're standing up for what it means to be a Jew in the world. You're called far right.
Mm-hmm. And that mindset of the Syrian Greeks, who were actually put into power by the Greek of all Greeks, Alexander the Great. It was because of after his day and then the people that came after him. And they were actually very they didn't bother the people of Israel for a long time, and then this Antiochus Epiphanes came into power, and everything changed overnight. But what I find historically very kind of compelling about this idea that the Greeks, we'll see this in the Torah parsha this week, the dream that Yaakov had about the adders, the sulam, this giant staircase or stairwell or ladder, the four angels ascending and descending. Each one of them stands for the four empires that will oppress Israel after Jacob gives birth to his children, and they become the nation of Israel. And it's really interesting because Greece really gives way to Rome later. It begins with Babel, and then Greece, and then Rome. And Rome, of course, as we see in the dream, the angel of Rome, the angel of Edom, goes all the way up the ladder and disappears, and he can't see him anymore.
And he doesn't come down.
And that means he doesn't come down. And what's compelling about this and what's interesting is the fact that the Greeks gave their culture and their mindset to the Romans. The Romans were a semi-barbaric people, and they later, they're all of their religious ideas, all their ideas about culture, their ideas about politics came from the Greeks. And there's a reference. I was going to talk about it last week. There's a reference to this when it says that Esau is given a blessing. He cries for a blessing, and so his father says, "I'll give you the fatness of the earth." And the word there is from the word shemen, oil. And the southern part of Italy was settled by Greek peoples, so much so that it was called Magna Graecia. And you know what else you find? You go back centuries. That part of southern Italy was settled by Greek colonies, and they later bled into and influenced the Roman villages that later became the Roman Empire. And you know what that part of southern Italy is known for is, since antiquity, all of the myriad of olive groves and olive producers for centuries ago. And I liken this to the idea that in the Torah, what is oil symbolic of? It's symbolic of wisdom, right? And yet you have the southern Greek colonies that influenced heavily the emerging Roman Empire, who were also producers of oil. So you have the Greek version of wisdom also feeding into the Romans, which is a dark version.
Oh,
go ahead.
Like that you just said something that would take us 2,000 years to explain. It's so deep what you just said. Kiss on your forehead for your wisdom. So first of all, like, I had a Zoom class 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about the concept of olive oil. I was actually teaching in the book of 2 Samuel. So after King David banishes his son Avshalom because of the death of the murder of Amnon after he raped Tamar, so Yoav has this idea, and he sends for this smart woman from Tekoa, which is a place here in Israel in southern Gush Etzion. And one of the reasons why he sends for this woman from Tekoa to come up with this whole judicial parable to try and convince King David to bring Absalom back is because the people in Tekoa were very smart, because it's the area in Israel to this day that is praised for its olive oil. And then I mentioned to our class some deep insight of our sages that olive oil has a certain kind of quality that it helps a person to remember, and it's synonymous with wisdom. But olives themselves make people forget. So this is a fact of like a Kabbalistic wisdom, natural health wisdom from the secrets of the sages. And so when one eats olives and one really enjoys olives, you should have a little olive oil with it, because there's like two different things. But anyway, what you just touched upon about the darkness, right? Concept of the darkness of Greek wisdom. The idea is that, and that is actually the expression that we use in our holiday prayers. And when the sages talk about the exile of Greece, they talk about how they wanted to darken the eyes of Israel. And so the question is, like, what do you mean darken? Everybody knows that Greek wisdom is like brought just tremendous illumination to the world, and all sorts of high ideas, but it's based on this total denial of the creation.
Right.
Because it's this whole Aristotelian thing of that there always was a world, the world is of ancient days, and it wasn't created on purpose by a higher intelligence, which is the major difference when you believe in the preeminence of man in Hashem's plan. You understand that Hashem created the world for the benefit of man. But anyway, and again, so they tried to foist the darkness on the children of Israel by prohibiting them from Torah study, by prohibiting circumcision and Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, and all the ways that we sanctify time and that we sanctify the material, right, circumcision, by showing that we're here as agents of Hashem's purpose. And what you referred to earlier, that whole idea of the ladder, one of the ideas of the ladder, like Yaakov is seeing these angels go up and down, and it represents, as you mentioned, the exiles, all the exiles that his children would be going through. And then he sees the Babylonians and everything. And then the last exile, which we are still officially in, which is called the exile of Edom, he doesn't see it end. He doesn't see the ending. He sees that ministering angel of that exile, and he doesn't see it end, because it feels like it's endless, right? So the whole idea that we were talking about earlier about, what we're up against now, it's like you see the same thing now, as far as that whole effort that the enemy of Israel made, which Chanukah commemorates. What happened there, really? I mean, when you study the history of Chanukah, and you took it back to Alexander, and then you went on to Antiochus. The fact is that it was a process, and it was a long process. But again, it was when it came to a tremendous crescendo in the time of the Maccabees. It was the flames were fanned and fueled by the Hellenist Jews. But the thing is that most people don't understand is that, as opposed to Purim, right, the miracle of Purim was the threat of a physical annihilation of the people of Israel. That Haman and Achashverosh, they made this decree, all the Jews were going to be killed, wiped out. That was not the original goal of the Greeks' war against the Jews in the time of the Greek occupation of Judea and the defilement of the Holy Temple. Their goal wasn't to physically wipe out the Jews. It was to wipe out the Torah. It was to subjugate them spiritually. And that's why they made all of those rules that you can't study Torah and you can't circumcise. And they desecrated the temple. But now the fact is that over a period of many, many decades, many years, there were hundreds of thousands of Jews that were brutally killed in the war that was foisted upon the land of Israel that Chanukah commemorates. But that wasn't the goal. That was like collateral damage. The goal was not the physical annihilation of the Jews as it was in the Purim story. The goal was the spiritual subjugation of the Jews.